The first time I noticed the light, I told myself it was nothing. A flicker outside my bedroom window, quick, gone before I could focus on it. I rolled over and went back to sleep. That was my first mistake. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I live alone, in a house at the end of a gravel road in rural Pennsylvania, surrounded by 20 acres of dense pine forest on 3 sides and a dead cornfield on the 4th. The nearest neighbor is a retired couple named the Harrisons, and they live almost a mile away. I moved here after my divorce because I wanted silence. I wanted to disappear from everything that reminded me of the life I used to have. I got the silence. I got the disappearing too, just not the kind I expected. The house itself is nothing special. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a kitchen that still has the original linoleum flooring from 1974, and a living room with a wood stove that takes the edge off on cold nights. I work remotely as a data analyst, which means I spend most of my day staring at a monitor and most of my evenings reading or sitting on the back porch listening to the forest breathe. It sounds peaceful. For the first 4 months, it was. The flickering light started in October. I noticed it on a Tuesday night. I remember because I had finished a glass of red wine, turned off the television at exactly 11, and was doing my usual walkthrough of the house before bed, checking the back door lock, turning off the kitchen light, making sure the wood stove was closed. It's a routine I built out of habit and something else I didn't have a name for yet. A low background hum of unease that I had started to feel whenever the sun went down. I passed my bedroom window, the one that faces the tree line on the north side of the property, and I saw it. A pale light about 30 yards into the trees. Not a flashlight, nothing that harsh or direct, more like the glow of a phone screen, soft and white blue, held at waist height. It was there for 2, maybe 3 seconds, and then it was gone. I stood at the window for a long time after that. My curtains were thin, and I knew that if there was still something out there, it could see me much more clearly than I could see it. The thought made my skin pull tight across my shoulders. I stepped back from the glass slowly and didn't sleep well that night. In the morning, I walked the tree line. I told myself I was looking for evidence of a hunter or a hiker, someone who had maybe cut through the property at night. It's not entirely uncommon. The forest connects to a larger stretch of state land a few miles north, and hunters use those woods in October. I found no footprints. The ground was soft from recent rain, the kind of ground that holds impressions easily. There was nothing. Not even a disturbed patch of pine needles. I told myself the wine had made my eyes play tricks on me. The second time was the following Friday. I hadn't been sleeping well all week. Nothing I could point to directly, just a series of small, strange things that I kept filing away as coincidences. The back door that I was certain I had locked being unlocked in the morning. A smell in the hallway late at night, something faintly organic and damp, like wet soil or decomposing leaves that would be completely gone by the time I turned the light on. The feeling, growing slowly but steadily, that when I sat in the living room in the evenings, the window behind me was not just a window, that something on the other side was using it as something else entirely. On Friday night, I was at my desk, working late to meet a deadline. It was past 2 in the morning. The rest of the house was dark. My desk lamp made a small, warm circle, and everything beyond it was shadow. I glanced out the window because I thought I heard something on the gravel path that runs alongside the house. A slow crunch, the kind a footstep makes. The light was there again. This time it wasn't in the trees. It was in the cornfield, at the far edge of the dead stalks, maybe 50 feet from the house. Still that same pale, cold glow. Still no obvious source, no shape around it that I could make out, just a light, hanging in the dark where no light should be. I did not go outside. I watched it for almost 4 minutes. I know that because I was aware of the time in the obsessive way you become aware of it when fear is sitting inside your chest like a stone. The light didn't move, it didn't flicker, it just existed out there in the dark, patient and still, in a way that felt almost deliberate. Then it went out. Not a gradual fade, an instant, as if whatever was holding it simply closed its hand. I called the Harrisons the next morning. I didn't want to sound alarmed, so I framed it casually. Had they seen anyone unusual walking through the area? Any issues with trespassers? Old Ray Harrison said no, nothing like that. But he mentioned almost offhand that the Sellers family, who used to own my property before it sat empty for 6 years, had a son who wasn't quite right. He said it in that careful, quiet way older people do when they're trying to tell you something without fully telling you. I asked what he meant. There was a pause on the phone. He used to wander at night, Ray said. Nobody ever knew where he went. They moved away to be closer to family, I think, closer to people who could look after him. I thanked Ray and hung up. I installed a motion-activated floodlight on the back of the house that same afternoon. It triggered for the first time 11 days later.
I was asleep. The light came on and washed through the thin bedroom curtains, bright enough to pull me out of a dead sleep. I looked at my phone, 3:09 a.m. I lay still, listening. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that has a texture to it. The wood stove had gone cold. The refrigerator had stopped its low hum. Every sound that normally filled the empty spaces of the night had stopped at the same time, as if the world outside had taken a breath and was holding it. The floodlight stayed on. Motion-activated lights work on a timer. Mine was set to 60 seconds. If something was still moving out there, it would stay on. I watched the ceiling glow and counted the seconds. At 60, it did not go off. At 90, it did not go off. At 120, it finally clicked off, and the room went dark again. I did not look out the window. I want to be honest about that. I was afraid in a way I had not felt since childhood. Not a rational, problem-solving kind of fear, but a deep and animal one. The kind that understands, without being told, that some situations require you to stay completely still and make no sound and pretend with everything you have that you do not exist. In the morning, there was nothing under the floodlight. No tracks, no disturbed gravel, no sign of an animal. The light was functioning perfectly. I tested it by walking back and forth in front of the sensor. It triggered instantly each time. Something had stood outside my house for more than 2 minutes. I started keeping a record, not because I'm a dramatic person, I'm not. I was a data analyst. I dealt in patterns and numbers and evidence. I started writing things down because I needed to see whether what I was experiencing was random or whether it had a shape to it. By mid-November, the shape was clear. It always came at night, between 2 and 4 in the morning. It was always on the north side of the property, either at the tree line or at the far edge of the cornfield. The floodlight triggered 3 more times in 2 weeks, always for 90 seconds or longer. Twice I heard the gravel crunch. Once, on a night when the temperature dropped below freezing and the ground was too hard for tracks, I heard something else, breathing. I was standing in the hallway with every light in the house off, my back flat against the wall next to the bedroom door, listening. And from the other side of the north-facing window, not close but not far either, maybe just outside the glass, I heard slow and measured breathing, in and out, steady, like something that had been standing there long enough to be completely calm. I did not move for a very long time after that. The next morning, I drove to the hardware store and bought blackout curtains for every window in the house. My sister called me in late November to check in, the way she did every few weeks. She's 7 years older and the practical one. When I told her what had been happening, she went quiet for a moment and then said I should come stay with her for a while. I told her I wasn't ready to admit that this thing, whatever it was, had gotten that far inside my head. "It sounds like it's already inside your head," she said. She wasn't wrong, but I stayed, partly because I needed to understand what was happening, and partly because of something I hadn't told her, something I was still trying to talk myself out of believing. I had started to feel it during the day. Not the lights, not the sounds, just the presence itself, that sensation of weight and attention that I had only ever felt at night. I would be sitting at my desk at 2 in the afternoon, sunlight coming through the window, coffee on the desk, completely ordinary and safe, and I would feel it, that tightening across the back of my neck, that pressure behind the eyes that meant something was looking at me. I started to feel it when I was in the shower, when I was cooking, when I was sitting on the back porch in the last hour of daylight, trying to remind myself that the world was still normal. It was always from the direction of the tree line, always from the north.
The last night happened in early December. I had started sleeping with all the lights on by then. I'm not embarrassed by that. Pride stops mattering when you have heard something breathing outside your window at 3 in the morning. I had also started leaving the television on all night because silence had become something I could no longer trust. I was asleep in the living room, the television talking quietly to itself, the wood stove keeping the room warm, all the curtains pulled tight. Something woke me at 3:17 a.m. Not a sound, not the floodlight, just the sudden, complete certainty that I was not alone in the room. I opened my eyes slowly. I did not move. The television was still on, a late-night news broadcast. The wood stove ticked gently. The room looked exactly as I had left it. But the back door was open. Not wide open, a few inches, just enough to let in a thin blade of cold night air that I could feel from across the room. The curtain over the door window shifted slightly in the draft. I had locked that door. I had checked it before I fell asleep. I had checked it the way I checked it every night, with my hand on the deadbolt and the handle, both. I sat up slowly. My phone was on the coffee table. I picked it up and held it like it was the only real thing in the world. The door moved. Slow, deliberate, pulling wider, as if something outside had placed a hand on it and was opening it the way a person does when they are trying not to make noise. I did not breathe. The draft grew stronger. The curtain lifted. The cold came in and wrapped itself around my bare feet on the floor. And then it stopped. The door hung half open, cold air flowing steadily through it, the curtain settling back against the glass, the television laughing at something jarringly ordinary, and absolute stillness from the other side of the door. I called 911. 2 officers came out 40 minutes later. They walked the property with flashlights and came back telling me they hadn't found anything. No sign of forced entry, no footprints that weren't mine, no indication of anyone in the immediate area. One of them suggested the latch might be faulty. The other one looked at me with the careful, neutral expression of someone who has been called out to a lot of rural properties in the middle of the night and knows exactly what that usually means. They left at just before 5 in the morning. I sat in the living room with the door locked and didn't move until the sun came up. I moved out 2 weeks later, stayed with my sister, told myself I would go back in the spring, that the isolation had simply been too much, that my mind had filled the silence with things that weren't there. I almost believed it. The house sat empty through January and February. I had a property manager, a woman named Diane, who agreed to check on it every couple of weeks. She was practical and no nonsense, the kind of person who doesn't dramatize things. She called me on a Thursday morning in late February. She had gone to check the property and found everything in order. Doors locked, no damage, no sign of anyone. But she wanted to mention one thing, and she said it in a slightly careful way that I recognized, the way Ray Harrison had spoken about the Sellers boy. The motion-activated floodlight on the north side of the house. She said it had been on when she arrived, running continuously. She had waited to see if it would shut off. It didn't. She checked the sensor, tested it manually. Everything was functioning, but it wouldn't stop running, as if something had been standing in front of it long enough for the timer to give up trying. She reset the power to it, she said. After that, it worked fine. I asked her what time she had arrived at the property. She said just after 3 in the afternoon, full daylight, sun out, nothing unusual anywhere on the property except for that light running. I thanked her and got off the phone. I sat with that for a long time. Then I pulled up my records, the log I had kept during those weeks in October and November, all those nights,
All those times I had noted the hour. Always between 2 and 4 in the morning. Always. I stared at that for a while, and then I looked at one other thing that had been sitting quietly in the back of my mind since Diane's call. Something that hadn't bothered me before because I hadn't had a reason to look at it closely. When I had initially set up the floodlight, I had aimed the sensor carefully, intentionally. I had wanted it to cover the back of the house and the edge of the gravel path. I had not pointed it at the tree line. I had not pointed it at the cornfield. I had pointed it at the north-facing wall of the house itself. The light was mounted 6 feet high, aimed at ground level directly below the bedroom window. Whatever had been triggering it all those nights wasn't standing in the cornfield. It was standing directly below my window, looking up.